And welcome back to another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast, or editorial, however you look at it. It's a show where I, Richard Harris, talk about why I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s over today. Today's topic is a continuation, if you will, of yesterday's show, where I was talking about in order for teams to win the postseason this year, you're going to need a bullpen because starting pitchers don't go more than 6 or 7 innings. And today's topic is why I prefer the 80s and 90s. Because last night, Blake Snell pitched 7 no-hit innings. And his team didn't score any runs until he was out of the game. And basically, he got a no decision. But in the bottom of the ninth, Xander Bogaerts hit a 2-run homer, and the Padres won 2-0 over the Rockies. Everyone today has been on their local shows talking about how that performance should have been enough and should be enough to give Snell the Cy Young Award in baseball, because he's had a brilliant year. He has probably the lowest earned run average in the league, but he only has 14 wins, and he has walked 8,000 people. And the bottom line is, most of the things he has done would guarantee a pitcher to Cy Young. But not today, because baseball has gone crazy. I told you this the other day. And don't understand it. And what baseball has done that has made them go crazy, I think, is when both leagues decided that the pitchers hitting was not going to happen anymore, everything changed in the game. Because now you got to face 9 hitters instead of facing 8 hitters and a pitcher who doesn't hit very well. There are pitchers who can hit, but they are not being allowed to do so any longer. And so, essentially, every team now is stacked their lineups, and because of that too, every team pitchers' earned run averages are higher, because now you're facing 9 hitters instead of facing 8 and 1. Obviously, in the 80s and 90s, the National League was pitchers had to hit, and the American League pitchers didn't. And so pitchers in the National League had a lower earned run average, because not only were you dealing with having to face a pitcher in every lineup, not every team has 8 gifted hitters like the Astros, or has 8 gifted hitters like Tampa. And so, personally, people say it's made the game better because it's more offensive. And I don't know if I buy that. Just because it's more offensive doesn't make it better, because people like pitching. I like pitching. And so when I'm watching games today and I see pitchers can't go more than 7 innings and it becomes bullpen games, sometimes that's fun, sometimes it's not. But the number one reason why I prefer the 80s and 90s baseball over today is what I just said in terms of the fact that pitchers in the 80s and 90s pitched to complete games. Nolan Ryan basically said, look, if you're going to be on my team, you're going to have to pitch more than 6 innings. You're going to have to be able to compete, be able to, take the ball and make your team win because of you pitching longer. Because the bottom line is you need to start what you finish. But some point in the 2000s, maybe late 90s, I want to say 2000s, teams decided that 100 pitches is where you stop, no matter what. And for some reason, for some crazy reason, pitchers, athletes over the last 15, 20 years just are not made the same way they were made in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even early 80s. Athletes today get hurt. Pitchers, there are more pitchers out for the season on the 60-day DL than in the history of the game. Johan Santana, who doesn't pitch anymore, pitched a no-hitter for the Mets in the 2000s. Threw 134 pitches and was never the same. Career pretty much ended. And he is the poster child, I think, for why teams don't let their pitchers throw more than 130 pitches a game. I was listening to Jake Peavy last night talk about how he threw 120 pitches in one start, and then the next start he threw 110 and then 101. It was normal. And so something happened. And I don't know what it was. I like to think it's because the pitchers in the 90s and the 80s developed a pitch called the split finger fastball, and the torque on the elbow is what has hurt pitchers over time. But no one wants to say that because the split finger fastball has been an effective pitch getting people out. Or maybe it's the way they grip the changeup. Maybe it's the way they grip the fastballs hurt their arms. And I don't understand why athletes today, they just get hurt more doing the simplest things, walking. And they just throw the ball straight. Maybe it's the way they pitch. I mean, I don't remember many times Tom Seaver ever being on a disabled list, Steve Carlton being on a disabled list. Nolan Ryan pitched till he was 44 and threw a no-hitter. Actually, to 46, threw a no-hitter at 44. Jamie Moyer pitched till he was 46. Now, he didn't throw hard. He was just he hated this expression because they said he used to toss salad. But he threw soft, and he threw strikes, and he lasted till he was 46. Bartolo Colon pitched till he was in the 40s. And so there is a method through how you pitch And maybe that helps your arm stay healthy. But I don't understand why pitchers, and nobody seems to understand why pitchers today only give you 100 and that's a wrap. It shouldn't be 100 and a wrap. Blake Snell last night should have pitched till he gave up a hit, even if that hit would have been a home run. There is no way in heaven or hell that a manager would come out to the mound and take the ball out of Dave Stewart's hand if he had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning on 100 pitches. Nolan Ryan's hand if he had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. Dwight Gooden's hand if he had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. No way. But they do that today. They do that if you don't have a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. If you were pitching well, and even if the score is 0-0, teams will take you out because they want to preserve you. That, for some reason, is the new norm in sports. Preservation. Preservation. You need to preserve your pitchers. You need to make sure he or she is available for the postseason, even if you may not even get to the postseason. And the sad thing is, we live in a world where there's truth in everything that one says, even though the most devastating, stupid, ignorant, racist, foolish thing people say, even the most stereotypical things that people say about athletes, about men, about women, there's always some truth in certain things. And athletes hate it. Athlete hates more than anything in the world to be called soft. But the fact of the matter is, people deem the actions of some of these athletes, sitting out games, not playing games, they call them soft. Instead of the athlete trying to, take one for the team like they used to do back in the day. I'm not saying pitchers are soft. I'm not saying teams are soft. Maybe I am saying teams are soft. I don't say the pitcher is soft. It's the team that makes a decision most of the times to take pitchers out of games. One of the Angels recently had a no-hitter going for a bunch of innings. Angels took him out. It's all about winning. And managers don't feel that their pitchers are going to be able to contain it or win it. So maybe that's why they don't think they're going to win. But back in the day, you weren't coming out to take the ball out of Doug Drabeck's hand. You weren't coming out to take the ball out of Roger Clemens' hand if he had no hitter going. You wouldn't come out and take the ball out of his hand if he had a shutout going. But for some reason, it's 100 pitches, and that's it. Maybe 105 if you got one more out to get and you look strong. And there's the proof in the pudding as to why they do that. Because pitchers, like I said, Johan Santana threw no-hitter for the Mets, the only one in Mets history. Actually, that's not true. The Mets threw one last year as a team. But he threw the first one in Mets history. In his life, he never was the same as a pitcher. So as we go forward towards the postseason, get your bullpens ready. Because no matter how dominant your starting pitcher is, he ain't gonna pass on you.